Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, the UKIP leader, Paul Nuttall, has appealed to members to support him after the backlash over false claims that he'd lost close personal friends at Hillsborough. And support he got. Delegates at the party's conference in Bolton gave him a standing ovation as he declared he'd been the target of a cruel and almost evil smear campaign. Fatima Manji was there.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Nuttall.
They hoped he would be the new leader to magic away their problems. But less than 3 months in, UKIP's Paul Nuttall has already courted controversy.
Are you going to clarify your comments about Hillsborough, Mr Nuttall?
He's facing calls to resign after falsely claiming on his website that he lost close personal friends at the tragedy which killed 96 Liverpool fans. The UKIP leader blamed his press officer, saying he meant acquaintances.
You were the manpower, you were the
But it's caused upset among the relatives of those who died. Some of whom told us they feel Mr Nuttall is now casting himself as the victim and using Hillsborough to climb the career ladder. Today he admitted he'd had a difficult week.
I do not apologise for what is a coordinated, cruel and almost evil smear campaign that has been directed towards me. I was also asked by 2 journalists yesterday whether I still have the support of my party.
The answer to that was clear, leaving the party leader apparently tearful.
Paul Nuttall, you could say many things about him, but what he isn't, he's a liar. He's an honourable man.
So he's just really bad at hiring press officers then?
You may draw that a conclusion. I'm not going to comment on his hiring of staff.
I think the public now, make their own decisions. They're not, they're just portrayed as daft, but they're not.
Well, considering that he's had a rough week, some of which is self-inflicted, I thought he was very rousing.
He may have support from the party faithful. But away from the so-called People's Army, multi-millionaire UKIP donor Aaron Banks has added fuel to the fire, saying this about Hillsborough.
I'm sick to death of hearing about it. Milking a tragedy forever is sick.
Here's what the UKIP leader had to say about that.
Mr Nuttall, will you condemn Aaron Banks saying he's sick of hearing about Hillsborough?
Why were you talking about Hillsborough?
Sorry,
Why were you talking
I've said everything I have to say on that issue.
What about Aaron Banks saying he's sick of hearing about Hillsborough? Will you condemn...
I've said absolutely everything I'm going to say on the subject. I've spoken to the people who mattered about this, and that's it.
There's still lots of questions to be answered there.
What about the families who say you should resign?
I was at Hillsborough. I've got witness statements, and it's a cruel, evil smear.
And then there's the man who's never short of a word or two, now a party idol venerated in oil painting.
Nigel Farage.
These days he seems as likely to be seen with President Trump as the party he led. Mr Farage told activists they needed to continue being radical or UKIP would be nothing.
This party succeeded because we were prepared to think the unthinkable. This party succeeded because we were prepared to speak the unspeakable.
You said UKIP has been successful because it says the unsayable. Does that include slurring the victims of Hillsborough?
He hasn't done that.
I'm talking about your friend Aaron Banks and the man who bankrolls UKIP.
Well, does he?
Well, he's a major donor to UKIP and he's a friend of yours. Do you think
He's a good friend of mine. And he says all sorts of things on Twitter.
Is it appropriate for him to say that he's sick to death of hearing about the Hillsborough tragedy?
I'm not his spokesman.
But he's your friend.
I've got lots of friends out there.
So you're happy to be associated with a man who says he's sick to death about hearing about how 96 people died in the tragedy?
Well, I'm not saying I'll never speak to him again.
But you won't condemn what he said?
I'm not defending Aaron, I'm not his spokesman. Get his spokesman.
Why did Paul Nuttall not go to the police with evidence about Hillsborough? Why has he not spoken about this before?
Oh, we've spoken a lot about it before, but he's politically very much been excluded from it.
Well, you say that, but Becky Shah, daughter of Inga Shah, who died at Hillsborough on that day, says he should resign. Margaret Aspinall from the Hillsborough Justice campaign says he needs to consider...
And the Labour mayor of Liverpool says it. Look, this whole thing was set up by the Labour Party to lure him in, to get him to get him distracted.
Meanwhile, Mr Nuttall himself seemed to have disappeared. Though his presence was felt, questions remain unanswered.
Fatima Manji reporting. With the by-election on the horizon and the likes of Tony Blair to rally against on Brexit, this should be a perfect time for a party like UKIP to make good grounds in the polls. But there was much frustration when the run-up to its conference in Bolton today was dominated by false claims about Hillsborough on the website of its new leader, Paul Nuttall. It ended up slightly overshadowing today's first policy pledge to scrap VAT on fish and chips. But after an apology and a defiant attack on the media, Mr Nuttall was moved almost to tears by a standing ovation.
Why should anyone believe what you say, Mr Nuttall?
His first conference as UKIP leader, and Paul Nuttall came to deliver not just a speech, but an apology. Sorry, to an extent, for false claims on his website that he'd lost close friends at Hillsborough.
Firstly, I take the blame for the fact that I failed to check what was put up on my website in my name. That is my fault, and I apologise. But I do not apologise for what is a coordinated, cruel and almost evil smear campaign. It has been a tough week for me, but I will not allow them to break me, and I will not allow them to break UKIP.
Their forgiveness was unanimous. Enough to bring a tear.
Thank you, I'm a bit overwhelmed. Thank you very much.
But he left, not sorry enough to give any interviews.
How can't you clear up a few things?
I've said absolutely everything I'm going to say on the subject. I've spoken to the people who mattered about this, and that's it.
There's still lots of questions to be answered there.
I was at Hillsborough. I've got witness statements.
And that's not his only backup. Virtually nobody in UKIP thinks he's done any wrong.
I would say well done, Labour. You set this up extremely well.
Well, didn't he set it up for himself? He employed that press officer. She wrote the press release on the website.
Do you know something? There's not one of us in politics that hasn't been embarrassed by something written on our website.
You're both from Liverpool. How do you think this has gone down at there?
I don't think it's helped, to be honest with you, but we've just got to get over that.
I think he's open, he's honest. I think he's been vilified.
So for now, Paul Nuttall still has the rapture of his party, but the bigger test is whether he gets the same reception among voters. Paul Brand, News at 10, Bolton.
I've been getting